Rain clouds loomed low over the highway as Emily Carter gripped the steering wheel of her aging silver minivan. The wipers squeaked back and forth, barely keeping up with the misty drizzle. In the back seat, her 7-year-old son, Noah, dozed off with his head resting against the window, clutching his worn-out stuffed dinosaur. The gas light had been on for the last 15 miles, and her heartbeat quickened every time she glanced at it. Emily was a single mother who worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a bakery in the mornings and another cleaning offices at night. Today had already taken its toll. Noah had been sick the night before, so she'd barely slept, but she'd promised him they would visit his aunt in the next town over for the weekend, and she didn't want to break that promise. The highway stretched endlessly ahead until finally, like a breath of relief, a faded sign came into view. Gas and go. 1 mile. She pulled into the nearly empty gas station, its flickering lights buzzing like tired fireflies. The place wasn't welcoming. 2 of the overhead bulbs were dead. The convenience store sign was half lit, and graffiti stained one of the brick walls. But she didn't have the luxury to be picky. She parked beside pump 3, turned off the engine, and gently nudged Noah awake. "Noah, sweetie," she whispered. "I need to get gas. Stay inside, okay? I'll be right here." Sleepy-eyed, he nodded and hugged his dinosaur tighter. Emily stepped out, shivering slightly as the wind nipped at her damp jacket. She grabbed her wallet and inserted her card into the pump, praying it wouldn't decline. Money had been tight all week. She waited for the beep, and to her relief, the screen flashed, approved. As the gas began to flow, she let out a tired sigh and glanced around. There was only one other car parked near the store, a dented maroon sedan with its headlights off. The driver wasn't in sight. Everything seemed quiet. She ran a hand through her damp hair and checked her phone. No signal. Inside the minivan, Noah rubbed his eyes and watched his mother through the rain-streaked window. He was used to long drives and late nights. She smiled at him to reassure him everything was fine, even though she was fighting off her own anxiety. That was when the sound of laughter snapped the silence. 3 men emerged from the side of the convenience store. They were rough-looking, leather jackets, baggy jeans, cigarettes dangling from their lips. One of them had a baseball cap turned backward and tattoos crawling up his neck. Another dragged a metal pipe across the pavement as if for effect. Their voices were loud and careless, echoing off the concrete. Emily's pulse quickened. She tried to keep her eyes on the gas pump, pretending not to notice, but their footsteps headed in her direction. The tallest of the 3 smirked as he approached. "Well, well," he drawled, eyeing her from head to toe. "What's a pretty little thing doing out here all alone?" Emily gripped the pump handle tighter, her knuckles turning white. "I'm just getting gas." "I'm not looking for any trouble." The man with the pipe chuckled and took a step closer. "Trouble? Who said anything about trouble? We're just being friendly." His tone was coated in mock innocence. The third one circled near the passenger side window where Noah sat. He leaned down, peering inside the van. Noah's eyes widened, and he slid down in his seat. "Hey," the man sneered with a grin. "You got a kid in there, cute." Emily's breath came faster. "Please step away from the vehicle," she said, trying to sound firm. Her voice trembled anyway. The tallest thug took another step, invading her space. "Relax, sweetheart, we're just bored. Thought you might want to chat. Or hang out a little." His meaning couldn't be mistaken. She glanced toward the store, hoping someone would see. But the windows were dark, and no clerk was in sight. The pump beeped to signal the tank was full, but she didn't move. She could feel Noah's frightened gaze on her. "Listen," she said quietly. "My son is in the car. Just let me leave." The man by the window tapped the glass with his finger, making Noah flinch. "Maybe we should say hi to the kid. Back off," Emily snapped before she could stop herself. That was a mistake. The one with the pipe straightened, his expression darkening. "You got a mouth on you," he said slowly. "Maybe we ought to teach you some manners." Emily's heart pounded in her ears. She took a step back, reaching into her pocket for her phone, even though she knew there was no signal. The pipe-wielding thug noticed and smirked. "Who you gonna call? This ain't exactly the neighborhood watch." Before she could respond, the sound of engines rumbled in the distance. At first it was faint, like thunder rolling over hills. The men paused, glancing toward the highway. The rumble grew louder, deeper, closer. It wasn't one engine, it was many. Emily turned her head just as the first motorcycle lights cut through the mist. Then another, and another. Within moments, a convoy of bikes rolled into the gas station lot, their headlights slicing through the gloom. The roar of engines echoed off the pavement, filling the space like a warning. The thugs froze, their cocky grins fading. Emily stood still, unsure what was happening. But for the first time that night, she felt a flicker of hope she didn't dare voice. The roar of the engines drowned out the drizzle, vibrating through the ground beneath Emily's feet. The motorcycles pulled into the station in a staggered formation, their headlights reflecting off the wet pavement like shards of light cutting through the night. Each rider was dressed in dark leather, some with patches sewn onto their jackets, others with helmets tucked under one arm. The thunderous arrival drew every eye. The thugs hesitated, exchanging uncertain looks. A moment earlier, they were confident, amused, in control. Now their arrogance wavered. The lead rider, a broad-shouldered man with silver streaks in his beard and a black bandana tied around his head, cut his engine first. The rest followed his example, the lot falling suddenly quiet except for the soft hum of cooling metal. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. Emily stepped back from the pump, still clutching her phone, unsure whether to move, speak, or stay frozen. Her heart hammered beneath her coat. She didn't know these bikers, had no reason to assume they were there for her, but their timing was anything but random. Noah pressed his palms to the window from inside the van, his wide eyes reflecting the glow of the headlights. The three thugs straightened defensively, as if trying to recover their earlier bravado. The one with the neck tattoo flicked his cigarette to the ground. "What's this?" he muttered, eyeing the newcomers. The man with the metal pipe tucked it behind his leg, suddenly not as bold. "Probably just passing through," he said under his breath, though his voice lacked conviction. The leader of the bikers swung a leg off his motorcycle and stood tall. He scanned the scene with sharp, assessing eyes. Two other riders, one a woman with a long braid, the other a stocky man with a scar across his brow, flanked him quietly. The leader's gaze drifted from the thugs to Emily, then to the little boy in the car. Nothing about his face changed, but something in the air shifted. "You boys lost?" he asked calmly, his voice steady and low. The tallest thug forced a smirk. "Just minding our business, old man. Didn't know we needed permission to stand in a gas station." A few of the bikers behind the leader chuckled, not with humor, but with a kind of cold disapproval. Their presence alone felt like a wall, unmovable and unbothered by the damp night air. "We didn't ask what you were doing here," the leader replied. "I asked if you were lost." The man tapping on Noah's window stepped away from the car, trying to keep his tone light. "We were just talking. No problems here." Emily's breath caught. Talking? The sheer audacity made her bite down the words she wanted to snap back. But before she could speak, the woman biker stepped forward, her eyes sharp as glass. "Is that right?" she said, glancing toward Emily. "Ma'am, you good?" Emily hesitated. Her instinct was always to de-escalate, to avoid conflict, even at her own expense. But when she looked back at Noah, who was staring at her helplessly from behind the glass, something in her steeled. She swallowed. "They wouldn't leave me alone. One of them scared my son." The words were barely above a whisper, but they carried enough weight. The bikers went still, like a pack sensing threat. The leader's jaw flexed once. "You heard the lady," he said evenly, facing the thugs. The one with the tattoo scoffed. "Man, don't get involved in things that don't concern you." The leader took a slow step closer. "A mother and a kid being cornered? That concerns me." The pipe-wielding thug tried to sound tough, but his voice faltered. "We didn't touch her." "Didn't have to," the woman biker replied. "Your intentions were loud enough." There was a murmur from the others as they spread out, forming a loose semicircle, not aggressive, but unmistakably defensive of Emily and her child. One biker walked quietly toward the van and positioned himself near the passenger side door, giving Noah a reassuring nod through the glass. The scarred rider took a step closer to the men, his posture relaxed but ready. "Time to go," he said simply. For the first time, the thugs seemed unsure. They weren't up against one person now, but a dozen, and every biker there carried themselves with a confidence that didn't need threats to be understood. Tattoo Neck tried one last attempt at dignity. "This ain't your property. You don't tell us what to do." The leader's voice never rose, but his words were final. "You're done here. Walk away while that's the easy option." The metal pipe glinted in the overhead light as its owner shifted nervously. He glanced at his friends. The third man, the one who'd peered into the van, was no longer smirking. He kept glancing at the motorcycles, calculating his odds. Finally, the tattooed thug spat on the ground and muttered, "Whatever. We were leaving anyway." They began to back away, heading toward their car with hollow bravado. The bikers didn't follow, didn't taunt, didn't escalate. They simply watched with the unspoken promise that if the men tried anything again, the outcome would be very different. Emily exhaled shakily for the first time in minutes. Noah pressed his face to the window again, watching the scene with wide, amazed eyes. But the night wasn't over, and gratitude wasn't the only emotion waiting to be felt. The maroon sedan's doors slammed, and its engine sputtered to life. The three thugs glanced nervously toward the bikers one last time before peeling out of the gas station lot, tires sliding slightly on the wet pavement. As their taillights disappeared into the dark highway, the heavy silence they left behind finally loosened its grip. Emily's knees felt weak with the sudden release of tension. She let go of the pump handle she'd unconsciously still been gripping and drew in a shaky breath. The cold air bit at her lungs. She looked toward the bikers, unsure of what to say. Her fear had been replaced by a disorienting mix of relief and disbelief. The lead rider stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away. Up close, he looked to be in his mid-50s, his beard threaded with gray but his stance firm. His expression wasn't harsh, just steady, like he'd seen far worse nights than this one. "You and the boy all right?" he asked, voice even but kind. Emily nodded, though her voice caught before words formed. "Yes, thank you. I didn't know what they were going to do." The woman with the braid approached the passenger side of the minivan and gently tapped the window. Noah hesitated at first, but when Emily nodded to him through the glass, he slowly lowered it. "You okay, little man?" she asked gently, crouching slightly to his level. Noah clutched his stuffed dinosaur to his chest but gave a tiny nod. "They were scaring my mom," he said quietly. "They're gone now," she assured him. "Nobody's gonna bother you anymore." A few more bikers dismounted, some stretching their arms or adjusting their gloves. None of them moved aggressively or spoke loudly. They seemed to instinctively know the situation still held a delicate edge. Emily wiped at her cheeks, surprised to find tears she hadn't realized were there. "I didn't even think anyone would be here. There was no one inside the store. There's probably one clerk on shift who doesn't get paid enough to care," said the scarred rider, folding his arms. "But you shouldn't have been alone out here with those hyenas lurking." The leader nodded once and glanced at the fuel pump. "Tank full?" Yes, she stammered. "I just need to put the nozzle back and go." He gave a small nod to one of his men. Before she could react, a tall, quiet biker with a long coat stepped over and gently returned the pump to its cradle for her. "You don't need to rush," the leader said. "Take a moment. Fear like that hits slow." Emily swallowed, words tangled in her chest. "I didn't know if they were going to break the window. Or worse. They prey on people they think are alone," the woman rider said, standing again. "Bad luck for them that you weren't." Emily looked around at the group. There were 12 bikers in total, their motorcycles parked in a crescent formation. Their jackets bore patches that read Iron Shepherd's MC. Some of the members exchanged glances but didn't speak. Their presence radiated a kind of strength that didn't need boasting. The leader extended a hand, not to shake, but as a gesture of calm. "Name's Colton," he said. "My friends call me Colt." "Emily," she replied softly. "My son's Noah." Colt glanced toward the minivan. "He's got good instincts. Didn't panic." Noah blinked at that, a little surprised at the compliment. Scarborough stepped up beside Colt, his voice gravelly. "We saw those punks circle the station from the road. Didn't like the look of it." "You saw them before you came in?" Emily asked, realizing this wasn't mere coincidence. Colt nodded once. "They were hooting and throwing cans at a road sign half a mile back. We don't ignore behavior like that. Then we saw you here alone. The rest rode itself." Emily placed a hand on the car door to steady herself. "I'm so grateful. I didn't know what else to do." "You don't owe us anything," the woman said. "You just got dealt a bad hand tonight." Noah peeked out further from the window. "You guys are bikers?" he asked, his voice small but curious. Colt's eyes softened slightly. "That we are." The rider by Noah's door pointed at the small toy the boy was gripping. "What's your buddy's name?" Noah looked down at his dinosaur. "Rex." "Strong name," the biker said with a nod. "Fitting." Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The tension in her shoulders began to ease as the fear bled away. For the first time since she pulled into the station, she felt something like safety. One of the younger bikers, a lanky man with freckles, glanced at the dark convenience store. "Place like this shouldn't even be open without security." "You came far?" "About an hour out," Emily replied. "Headed north to my sister's. Gaslight came on and—" She shook her head. "I didn't have a choice." Colt exchanged a look with the woman rider. It wasn't judgmental, just understanding. "You driving the rest of the way tonight?" he asked. Emily glanced instinctively at the tired slump of her son's shoulders. "I was—" But now I don't know. Colt gave a small nod, as if settling something in his mind. We're stopping here for 15 minutes before heading past Ridgeview. That's northbound. You're not driving out of here alone tonight. Emily blinked. What do you mean? We'll ride with you, he said plainly. You and the boy, at least until you're somewhere safe. Her eyes widened, overwhelmed. You don't have to do that. Scarborough gave a quiet snort. Lady, we didn't rumble in here to watch you get cornered and then just let fate take another swing. Colt folded his arms. You don't argue with luck when it shows up. And tonight, luck looks like bikes and leather. The humor in his tone was subtle but real. And for the first time, Emily managed a faint, relieved smile. What she didn't know was that their ride together would lead to far more than just an escort through the dark. The drizzle eased into a misty hush as the tension faded from the air. Emily buckled Noah into his seat properly, hands still unsteady but calmer than before. She shut the van door gently and turned back toward the bikers, unsure how to express the swirl of emotions churning inside her. Fear, relief, disbelief, gratitude. Colt spoke to his group in low tones. A few nodded and dispersed, checking their bikes or stretching their legs. Others lingered near Emily, making sure she didn't feel abandoned even in the momentary quiet. The woman with the braid, whose patch read Renee, walked beside Emily as she circled around to the driver's side. You okay to drive? Renee asked, not with suspicion, but concern. Emily nodded slowly. I think so, I'm still processing everything. That's normal, Renee said gently. Shock doesn't ask permission before it shows up. Emily gave a tired chuckle. Seems like everything in my life lately shows up uninvited. Renee glanced at her, reading more in those words than Emily had intended to reveal. You're doing better than you think, she said. Meanwhile, Noah cracked the window slightly and peeked out as one of the bikers, an easygoing man with a red beard named Hank, knelt down to check something near the front tire of the van. Everything okay? Emily asked, walking over. Just making sure you're not running on air and prayers, Hank said with a half smile. You're fine. Tire pressure's a bit low, but it'll hold till Ridgeview. Colt stepped forward again, glancing at his watch. We ride in 5 minutes. Emily hesitated. I don't want to slow you down. You've already done so much, you're not slowing anyone down, Colt said firmly. We pass through Ridgeview anyway. Easier to ride knowing you're not looking over your shoulder. Before she could thank him again, the rumble of the maroon sedan returning cut harshly through the quiet. The thug's car crept back into view at the edge of the station exit, headlights dim, engine revving low. It didn't pull in fully, but hovered near the road as if reconsidering its earlier retreat. Scarborough exhaled sharply. Didn't think they had the guts to circle back. A murmur of irritation rolled through the riders, but none of them moved with panic. They simply shifted. Within seconds, the Iron Shepherds formed a loose line in front of Emily's van, engines ready, eyes fixed on the returning car. Emily's pulse spiked again, but this time she wasn't paralyzed with fear. The thugs' silhouettes were barely visible through the fogged windshield, but the hesitation in their movement was obvious. They were testing boundaries, seeing if the bikers were bluffing. They were not. Colt didn't bark orders. He didn't raise his voice. He simply walked forward 3 paces, hands at his sides, posture calm but absolute. The message was unmistakable. Try something and you'll regret it. The car lingered. The engine revved once. A long second passed. Then the sedan jerked forward, swinging a clumsy U-turn before speeding away for good this time, taillights flickering like a retreating warning. Only after the sound faded did the riders relax slightly. Renee looked over at Emily. See? Some predators only understand the sound of a bigger growl. Emily let out a shaky laugh. You're all something else. Just people who know what it's like to be cornered, Renee replied. Colt signaled to his group, and engines roared back to life one by one. The sound wasn't frightening now. It was strangely comforting, like a shield made of thunder. Hank stepped toward Emily's window as she climbed into the driver's seat. Just stay in the middle of the pack, he said. We'll take the lead and cover your rear. Emily fastened her seatbelt, glancing at Noah in the rearview mirror. He looked out the window at the bikers with awe and lingering fear, but also something else. Admiration. The riders took formation quickly, 3 in front, 3 along each side, and 3 behind. Emily's van looked small between them, but safe, like a child walking among towering sentinels. When Colt revved once and pulled forward, the rest followed. Emily shifted into drive and eased out of the parking lot with them, her headlights catching the shimmering mist rising off the road. The highway, which had seemed so threatening earlier, now felt like a quiet tunnel carved through the darkness. The rumble of engines around her was steady and strong, their taillights glowing like a constellation guiding her north. For 10 long minutes, no one spoke. Not through the radios the riders wore, not between Emily and Noah. The world condensed into hums, reflections, and breath. Noah finally whispered, "Mom, are they like superheroes?" Emily swallowed the lump in her throat and managed a smile. Maybe they're just people who don't look away. As the miles passed, she noticed something she hadn't expected, not just safety, but a sense of belonging. These were strangers, yet they'd stood between her and danger without hesitation. And some part of her, long starved of protection, felt the weight lift. A road sign appeared through the drizzle, Ridgeview, 14 miles. 14 miles wasn't long, but it was long enough for many things to change, and for one unexpected bond to begin. Miles to Ridgeview passed faster than Emily expected. The tension that had gripped her earlier slowly unraveled with every turn of the tires. The motorcycles around her formed a steady rhythm, 3 headlights ahead guiding the way, the others flanking and shielding her from passing shadows. The rain had faded now, leaving only damp reflections of the bike's lights scattered across the road like stars trapped in puddles. Noah had stopped clutching his dinosaur so tightly. Instead, he stared out the window at the bikers beside them, watching the way they rode with precision, as if they could sense each other's movements before they happened. One of them, Hank with the red beard, glanced over at Noah occasionally and gave a subtle nod every time their eyes met. For the first time in a long while, Emily didn't feel like she was doing everything alone. As they neared the ridge overlooking the town's outskirts, the lead biker, Colt, raised his hand briefly. The whole group adjusted in perfect unison, slowing just enough to remain in formation as the road curved toward the gas station on the edge of Ridgeview. Its lights glowed warmer and brighter than the rundown station they'd left behind. Colt pulled into the lot first, followed by the others and finally Emily. Engines quieted one by one, the sudden silence wrapping around them with a strange comfort. Emily put the van in park and turned off the ignition, the stillness inside making her ears ring after the long stretch of road and thunderous engines. She opened the driver's door and stepped out slowly, legs still unsteady from the adrenaline she hadn't fully shaken. Noah unbuckled and climbed out behind her, sticking close. The riders dismounted and gathered loosely, not crowding her but waiting patiently. Colt stepped forward, pulling off his riding gloves. "You're past the worst stretch," he said. "Your sister close?" "About 5 miles from here," Emily said. "A small neighborhood off the main road." Renee crossed her arms. "You need us to ride the rest of the way, or you think you're good from here?" Emily exhaled, considering. The highway felt like a threat, but the last road home felt small by comparison. I think I can take it from here." Colt nodded once. "Then we'll wait until you're gone and make sure those clowns don't double back." Emily looked at the group, her voice low and full. "I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't shown up, I don't know what would have—" "You don't need to," Colt interrupted gently. "We didn't do it for thanks." Hank knelt down beside Noah again, noticing the boy's wide-eyed silence. "You did good back there, little man. Brave doesn't mean loud, it means holding still when it counts." Noah gave him a small smile. "Are you guys like a team?" Renee grinned. "Something like that." Another rider, a younger man with a toothpick in his mouth, added, "We just don't let the world eat people alive when we're looking right at it." Emily's throat tightened with emotion she hadn't allowed herself to show in front of the thugs. "People don't usually stop," she said softly. "Not anymore." Colt's eyes held hers for a moment. "Maybe they do. Just not always the people you expect." She nodded, absorbing that. The riders began to remount, but Renee lingered a moment longer. From inside one of her saddlebags, she pulled out a black card about the size of a business card. It wasn't glossy or branded, just embossed with Iron Shepherd's MC and a phone number. "If you're ever in trouble again," Renee said, placing it gently in Emily's hand, "call that. Might be a chapter closer than you think." Emily blinked, stunned. "You mean it?" Renee gave a half smile. "We don't hand those out for show." Noah tugged on Emily's sleeve. "Mom?" She looked down at him, then back up at the bikers. "If there's ever anything I can do—" Hank waved a dismissive hand with a chuckle. "Just get home safe and keep that kid smiling." Colt gave a final nod to Emily before swinging his leg over his bike. "You ride careful, Emily. World's rough, but it's not empty." The engines roared to life once more, not with threat, but with the same power that had chased fear away only an hour before. The riders peeled off in formation, turning back the way they came, lights disappearing into the night, like a line of fireflies escorting the dark. Emily stood there for a moment with Noah beside her, watching until the final glow vanished. The card in her hand felt heavier than paper, like a promise etched in leather and asphalt. Noah looked up at her. "Mom? Yes, baby? Do you think we'll ever see them again?" Emily glanced down at the card, then at the wet road ahead. "Maybe not, but I think they'll see us if we ever need them." She opened the van door, helping Noah climb in before she settled behind the wheel. As she pulled out of the lot and onto the quiet road toward her sisters, she glanced once more at the empty highway behind them. It no longer looked lonely. It looked watched. And for the first time in a long time, Emily didn't feel small in the world, because somewhere out there, strangers on wheels had shown her that even in the darkest places, protection still roared loud enough to be heard.